You'll survive 15 minutes.
Sure. Yeah. Actually, there's one right here.
Then we have trail rides and hikes on the road and photographs. What just thrills me about having people in like this is at round tables, people find one another and visit. And it's working again. I just love that. So welcome. Get to know one another. You'll have so many experiences in common. And each of you will know something about the eclipse that no one else knows.
Hey Tony, we've all been gathered to welcome you back. We're glad you're here. Ranch, and this is sort of our summer ranch. We came up here in 2007 and have been here since then. We had a fire here 6 years ago, then we had 2 years of drought, and then I showed the motorcycle gang the dramatic flood we had here last year, a 50-year flood. And then Stephen and Hannah called me one night and said, Grampy, you probably ought to come up and see what happened. We had a tornado. Well, there are never tornadoes coming through. But I have a really good friend who went through a much bigger fire a couple of years ago, and he described it this way. The gray smoke billowed upward as it turned the sun blood red. We wondered as we saddled up how many cows were dead. Our eyes watered from the ashes, noses burned from the smell. We eyeballed one another as we rode into that hell. We were half a mile into the smoke when we first saw the fire. It was burning up the treetops, the brisk breeze fanned it higher. Behind that wall of fire, the grass was burning on the ground, while out in front, spot fires started from embers coming down. The orange-black flames looked hungry as they crackled and they popped. I wondered how much effort it would take to get them stopped. Our ponies were the best we had, but they didn't want to go, but we talked to give them confidence through ashfalls and thick as snow. The fire was burning up a ridge and over in a draw. We thought we saw some movement, then we heard the cattle bawl. We urged our ponies forward and we heard the cow boss shout, Boys, we got about 10 minutes to get these cattle out. The cows and calves were bunched up in a little grassy draw. I could tell before it started this would get a little raw. We might be home for supper with some windy tales to tell, or dead from lack of oxygen and burned up in that hell. We circled around the cattle and we drove them up the slope and tried to make them hustle with their bridle reins and ropes. We reached the top and thought that maybe then we wouldn't cry, but the fire was waiting for us coming up the other side. We could see a gap a trail made in this burning smoke-filled trees, and we drove the cattle towards it screaming like banshees. If we could make 400 yards, we'd flee this fiery trail, when all at once a burning snag fell down and blocked the rocky trail. Well, we just all sat there like trapped hamsters in a cage, except the old cow boss. He went moping through the sage. He put a loop on that tree and dallied up real tight and spurred that horse's belly till he pulled with all his might. That Craig moved a little, the boss's rope was burning. He didn't even turn around, he just sat there and spurring. When that tree came loose, I swear his rope was tighter than a wire. We drove the cattle towards it and pushed them through the fire. We gagged and choked on greasy smoke, and we got the cattle through. Oh, they were singed and scorched a little, but I reckon we were too. With the cattle in a safer place, we took a needed break. We were thinking about cold beer, hash browns, and a great big juicy steak. And Ned says, well, boys, it really is my hope we find some extra bucks and buy the boss a rope. But Zeke said, Sunday morning in the church pew I will sit, for I now seen the likes of hell and I don't cotton in. Anyway, we love the Western humor, and you get a lot of it.
rodeo church services, you got 5 minutes. You got 5 minutes to get the message across, because it's right before the grand entry, and all the rough stuck riders, the first half of the bull riders, there's a split performance, are all stretching, pulling ropes. So I had 5 minutes. While the grand entry was going around, they go back to the warm up, and they were gone. You'd lose them. So I learned to try to make it quick.
Thanks to the Father in this holy name. Don't go riding on that long black train. I said thanks to the Father in this holy name. Don't go riding on that long black train. Yeah, watch out, brother, for that long black train. The devil's driving that long black train.
The way I read it, it's not your church that's in heaven with you. It's not your pastor. It's not your mom and dad. They're good role models, hopefully. It's you. But now, how do we do this? So, as Diemer would send the guys up there to work on the fence, he might tell them to bring some more wire, or tighten it up, or bring certain tools. As he does that, I'm going to give you some tools. Love, joy, peace, long-suffering. I don't like that one too much. Gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. These are things that, and I want to encourage every cowboy, whether alone in their car or on a hill or in metro traffic. The Cowboy Way is one thing at a time. You're going to have things pop up all the time you have to deal with. Pick patience. Focus, Father, for the stock today, for the ranch and the crews here that are serving everybody, for all the glory of all our guests out here that are going to watch the eclipse tomorrow. Thank you, Lord. Amen. God bless you, folks.
Dear Heavenly Father, we just pause and acknowledge you and thank you for the blessings of this day. Thank you for Wishbone's message this morning. May we have ears to hear, eyes to see. Lord, a special thank you for all the hands that prepared this meal. And bless this food to our use and us to thy service. In the name of your Son, Jesus.
Amen. God bless you guys. Thank you very much for coming to Cowboy Church.
Do you mind if I just put this here?
I've mentioned several times the story about Bill getting in touch with us and wanting to camp tonight. We said, no, we're not going to have any campers. And then Suzie and I were in our offices one night, which are next to each other, and she's laughing. And so I wander in, and it's one of Phil's YouTube videos. So I said, okay, this guy is interesting. And he worked for the space program for 33 years and has agreed to sort of give us a history of what he was involved in and that type of thing. I know there's a lot of the families that want to get and see this, so they're really eager to. So welcome to the Powderhorn Ranch. We're glad you're here. I'm early in the
okay?
And I'm going to sort of turn it over to you. Don't go away yet.
So first I want to thank you for having us.
It's our treat.
I know y'all didn't want any campers, and you gave us the option of using the foreman's house, so technically you don't have to camp. We have printed up. Hopefully I printed up enough for every group of people to take some home with us. I've got more for you. Tony, is there other right? And Trace, where's Trace? Right there. That's the three of us that was here, and we're grateful to be here. One thing I learned from you last night was your relative made that happen.
Ellen True is the artist who did the bucking horses like Great Oak.
Oh, wow. Wow.
On the Wyoming license plate.
Wow.
He was a very prolific artist.
And so my first day on the job, this was actually to work on a product called Standard Missile. And that system is the first line of defense against attack for our Navy. And so ABM-1 USS Norton Sound was Navy's test bed from 1945 until 1986. And I wrote it in 83 and 1983, 1984. So I'm a kid out of college. I shipped English shipyard. And this ship, which had 1,000 crew members on it in World War II, was sitting next to the USS Iowa coming out of mothballs back then. And so this ship was this big, and the Iowa was like this big. It was stunning. So my first week on the job, we left out of Pascagoula, and at the end of the week we put into Jamaica. And so at the end of the week I'm sitting in Jamaica on the beach with a little rum punch drink, and I'm thinking this aerospace gig is really good. Word came out, General Dynamics, they had a program called Shuttle Centaur. They had to hit it really hard. They were going to launch Galileo. We're testing on morning. We go out top of the blockhouse, and it's full of people, and we're watching the Challenger fly out. So we were actually the closest land point to Challenger when the accident happened. So when that happened, the shuttle grounded for 2 years. Galileo dumped off to another upper stage called an IUS, which actually had half the energy of a Centaur. And so they had to do the thing where they loop around the planets, and they loop around the planets, and keep gaining speed, and then they flip on out to Jupiter. Everybody remember Shoemaker-Levy comet that came through years ago? This was the largest common strike ever observed in human recorded history. This strike alone was bigger than the Earth. So, I mean, in perspective, if that had come towards us, it wouldn't be, wipe out the dinosaurs, it'd be destroy the planet kind of thing. And so here we are, the human race, we've evolved to the point with our technology that we can create the most sophisticated science probe ever created and plan for it to go to Jupiter. And because of Challenger blowing up, if Challenger hadn't blown up and we'd flown, we would have been in orbit in 1990 around Jupiter. Comet happened in 1993. As it was, Galileo was only on its way. So I mean, just the cosmic timing of all this just kind of is mind-boggling. But things have effects. In the early 1980s, everything was planned to go on the space shuttle. So America had several launch vehicles. They had Delta, they had Atlas, they had Titan, and the shuttle was coming online. And the plan was shut down Delta, Atlas, Titan, and put everything on the space shuttle. Air Force was getting their own space shuttle to fly out of Vandenberg Air Force Base. And this is going to be the new way we go do business. There was some concern in the Air Force, what do we do if something happens with a space shuttle and we can't put, critical military satellites in orbit? And so they started this program called Supplemental Launch Vehicle, and to plan 10 Titan IVs to be in backup in case anything ever happened to a shuttle. Well, Challenger happened, and that program went from 10 vehicles to 45 vehicles, and it became a whole program. So again, you can see another man here. I always like this picture because I'm standing right there. I remember the plane circling around when I was taking these and where we were. So one of our most interesting moments was launching Cassini probe. And we did that in 1997. And it also had a free flyer on it called Huygens. And Huygens actually soft landed on Titan, which was the first vehicle. And about this time in 1998, we had a really bad day. So as the thing's flying, it's actually the guidance system is shut down. Yeah, it locked itself into position. As soon as it started tilting, the guidance system had actually started back up. There's just a little blip on the payload fairing. And what that is that payload fairing just cracked open. And on the vehicle, there's a system called ISDIS. And it's called Inadvertent Separation and Destruct System. And the purpose of ISDIS is if the integrity of the vehicle gets violated, the vehicle will self-destruct. So when it saw the fairing open up, it literally just broke the wire. When the wire broke, we lost continuity in the vehicle, and command destruct started its sequence. And so the first command destruct command, load solid rocket motor number 1. And now you kind of see, and then the whole thing comes up with it.
What was the payload?
Can't tell you. Even today I can't tell you. Yeah, so we went out on ships right off the coast. You can see our launch pad. We're just sitting right out there pulling pieces out of the ocean. There was a call to go work on a program that made the control systems for DDG destroyers. So DDG destroyers are these guys. And the only other picture you may have seen about this, and I'll talk about it in a minute, is this was the class of ship the USS Cole is. This was what we manufactured. This is the shaft control unit that sits up in for each engine room. This is the one that came out of the Cole, and it was actually blown up through the deck above it, when the accident. Back into the space program, you may have heard a satellite called GOES-R recently launched. GOES-R is the next generation weather satellite. And then the other thing going on out there that's a really big deal is the Orion spacecraft. This is a lot like an Apollo capsule, except bigger. And when they fly to Mars using this vehicle, they'll be attached to a spaceship that's built in orbit from the space station. This is where our Aegis destroyers are sitting today, is off the coast of North Korea with these missiles in there. And so the last one we come to is Cassini mission. so as we we'll step into that.
After 20 years in space, NASA's Cassini spacecraft is running out of fuel. And so, to protect moons of Saturn that could have conditions suitable for life, a spectacular end has been planned for this long-lived traveler from Earth.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and liftoff of the Cassini spacecraft on a million-mile trek to Saturn. We have cleared the tower.
So one disappointment there was we all signed a plaque that was going to be in space forever, and they didn't tell us they were going to destroy it. So, Diemer asked me to do this. I told him I hadn't ever really sat down and thought about all the stuff I'd been through, and it just made me kind of realize how lucky I was. Some of the different places I was, this thing for happened.
I used to travel 3 weeks a month for years and years and years and years and years. And I just don't ever want to do it anymore. It's work.
It is. It's just work. And it hasn't gotten better. Yeah. So, there'll be a day where I can actually say, I don't have to get in an airplane anymore. And I can't complain. I fly enough now, and my company's very good to me. So at the very least, I get to fly business class when I'm traveling overseas. So at least I'm not.
A lot of different things, and people ask me if I want to travel. Yeah, Douglas to Casper, Casper to Douglas. Anyway, we just do lots of things. We just bought 3 auto repair shops in Boulder, Colorado.
Oh, really?
And
now you got to go Douglas, Casper, Boulder.
Oh no.
So this isn't for the faint of heart. So you started this 10 years ago.
Yes. Right. And now I grew up 30 miles south of here on a ranch that my brother started. Anyway, you guys are good listeners. We love what we're doing. I love the ranch. We run it as an economic unit. This is not the trophy ranch. This is not
the business.
This is a business. We run it as a business. Now, Tony, what do you do?
I sell software to hospitals. I was just telling Chris, it's actually perinatal safety software for birthing centers.
Oh.
So, and also emergency medicine. Before that, I was in the Navy. Was a naval flight officer flying P-3s, hunting submarines for years. And I was a catapult officer for a few years out of Seattle, instructor out of Jacksonville, and then I transitioned out. My second daughter was born, who's a sophomore now, down in Laramie, who I think probably knows Hayden, because he's part of the Navigator group, so they must know each other.
They would know each other. No,
Hi.
this is Tony.
Nice to meet you, Tony.
This is Trace.
I met you on the road.
On the road.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
And I'm Trace.
Nice to meet you, Trace.
So we owe all of this to you.
Yes, you do.
I was going to say, you don't. You were in a helmet the last time I saw you.
Oh, okay. So I sort of assumed you knew everybody, but you didn't.
No.
So anyway, thank you for making the connection.
I'm glad you guys were able to come.
We are too.
Susie and I have agreed no more village idiot pictures. We take one of those, they all disappear. No more surprises. We don't do surprises anymore.
Well, if you watch the videos, you'll see there's always something you're not afraid to show your grandkids. Yeah.
Thanks.
How did you guys meet?
Prison?
I think it was the work detail. I think I met Tony in prison.
So we met, I think, 5 years ago. So I had a friend of mine that lived across the street from him. A friend of mine and I were about to go on a ride. He had just moved in, saw my friend come up, saw his motorcycle, and he'd just walk up and start up a conversation like he did with you, because that's what he does. So I get a call from my friend Bob, and he says, look, I just met this guy, Phil. He's got a KLR. He's going on a trip with us, and now you know as much about him as I do. And so we started riding.
That's how we got started.
Well, what's interesting is they came in today and they were talking. I'm like, oh, you've got to meet my daughter. She's going to love you guys. So he starts talking. He's like, well, I was down at the Tomahawk and I met Mackenzie. And I'm like, oh, that's my daughter. He's like, oh, okay. I'm like, okay, fine. Well, that was easy. Yeah. Ta-da.
We're all transplants into Colorado at one time or another.
Oh, gotcha.
But we all ride. There's a motorcycle group that kind of meets for breakfast on Saturdays and does rides.
We're the what's the apple dumpling gang rides again kind of gang. Pretty quiet.
One of the things I'm most proud about is our diamond brand. And it is very difficult to get a single iron brand anymore anywhere in the United States. And this brand comes from Susie's family. They gave it to us about 40 years ago. And so all of our businesses are made for a brand of some sort. When you're branding, you have a wrestler on the head and a wrestler holding the heels. And one of the meanest jokes we ever do at a branding is we'll set aside one iron and not put it in the fire. And so we'll have a new wrestler. We'll pick up the new iron, the cold iron, and we'll brand it. And he'll go, we're not in the fair. Have you ever seen a branding from the standpoint of the spur? It's a little different perspective, I can tell you that for sure. It's real dark and quiet as your boots are velvet on. The only sound's a jingle as you step out into the dawn. You can tell they're saddling horses from the ones you see behind, but what's going on out front? For the spur, your view is blind. The trailer gates are open, the horse is loaded in, the key goes in the ignition, and the engine starts to spin. The morning sky is gorgeous as the sun is coming up, but for the spur, you're looking backwards on the floorboard of the truck. It's spilled coffee, bouncing bumpy roads, and lots of aching bones, all we can dig in post holes, so the cowboy's only grown. But with a stop and backing up, you step out upon the ground, and all at once you're surrounded by all sorts of different sounds. It's creaky gates, eager shouts, good mornings and replies. Horses snorting, stomping, cowboys already swapping lives. As boot goes over the saddle, the cowboys are mounting up. There are a whole lot of riders, but for some reason you're in the back. You are stuck. You circle around the cattle. You try to bunch them up, but the cows are mighty frisky. The boys aren't having any luck. As the spur, I'm pressed first in one flank, then the other. That cowboy is really pushing that horse to get those cows together. One by one in the rear, my cowboy turns them back. Almost single-handedly, he's picking up the slack. The cattle are pushed in the pens. The gate is finally shut. The calves are sorted off the cows when a horse begins to buck. I can't see what happens as my cowboy spins around, but he catches the bucked off rider and breaks his fall to the ground. As we turn and walk slowly to the rail, them looks are ugly, like them just as soon we'd be in jail. I'd like to be in the action where the work is hard and hot. I'd like to help with the branding, but for some reason I'm not. By mistake, a cowboy roped a calf around the neck. He's jumping through the wrestlers, about to cause a wreck. My cowboy reaches across the flank, picks up, and with his leg he gives a kick, over goes the pesky calf. A pretty nifty trick. Two big wrestlers jump on the calf out of breath and let it where he lays. I see them sullen looks again as my cowboy walks away. What is that I'm missing? My cowboy's really gonna help, but every time he turns his back, them looks that make you yell. As I reflect upon this puzzle and I gaze into the sky, I see something that had previously missed my eye. Out the back of my cowboy's hat, blowing in the breeze, is a long girl's ponytail. As pretty as you please. Why, my cowboy's no boy at all, but a hard-working iron filly. She made them cowboys jealous because she made them all look silly. So now you've heard my story, I can share Grandpa's Western pearls. Sometimes when it comes to doing the work, the best cowboy is a girl. I could go on and on. We're thrilled you're here. We're just so tickled to meet so many of you. We'll have a shared adventure tomorrow. Thank you all for listening.